So where's this mystery fiancé of yours? Or did you make him up? My sister Jessica's voice rang out across the garden, loud enough for everyone at her engagement party to hear. I felt my face flush as conversations died down, guests turning to watch the spectacle. He's running late from work, I said quietly, gripping my champagne glass tighter. He'll be here. My mother laughed, sharp and brittle. Work on a Saturday afternoon? Really, sweetheart, you don't have to keep up this charade. We all know there's no fiancé. My name is Rachel. I'm 29 years old, and I've spent most of my life being the disappointment of the family. While Jessica excelled at everything, from her MBA to her engagement to Marcus, a successful hedge fund manager, I chose a different path. I worked as a wildlife biologist, spending months in remote locations studying endangered species ecosystems. It wasn't glamorous by my family's standards, and it certainly didn't pay well, but it was mine. Standing in my parents' perfectly manicured backyard in Westchester County, New York, surrounded by Jessica's equally perfect friends and their judgmental stares, I wished I was anywhere else. The late afternoon sun beat down on us, making the silk dress I'd borrowed feel like a prison. Rachel has always been creative, my father added from his position near the grill where he was holding court with Marcus's father. Remember when she said she was going to save endangered species? Now she's inventing boyfriends, the guests laughed. Some looked uncomfortable, but most seemed entertained by my humiliation. Jessica smiled sweetly, her hand resting on Marcus's arm, her enormous diamond ring catching the sunlight. She'd called 2 weeks ago to tell me about this party, and in a moment of weakness I'd mentioned I was seeing someone. That single comment had spiraled into my family assuming I was engaged. When I tried to correct them, they'd talked over me, already planning how to show me up at Jessica's celebration. Tell us about him, Jessica pressed, her blue eyes glinting with malicious glee. What does this phantom fiancé do? Where did you meet him? I opened my mouth, then closed it. The truth was complicated. 3 months ago, I'd met someone during a research expedition in Wyoming. His name was James, and he'd been funding wildlife conservation projects across the region. We'd spent 2 weeks together, talking late into the night about habitat preservation, sharing meals in tiny mountain restaurants, watching sunsets from his cabin. When the expedition ended, he'd kissed me goodbye and said he'd see me again soon. Since then, we'd exchanged messages and video calls when his schedule allowed. He'd visited me twice in New York, but we'd never discussed labels or the future. We simply existed in this strange, wonderful space where I felt more understood than I ever had in my life. He's in environmental work, I said carefully. He invests in conservation projects, my mother snorted. So he's unemployed. That tracks. No, Mom, that's not what I said. A trust fund baby-playing activist, Marcus interjected with a smirk. How progressive of you, Rachel. I felt tears burning behind my eyes but refused to let them fall. This was exactly why I'd stopped coming to family events. Every holiday, every birthday, every celebration turned into an opportunity for them to remind me that I wasn't good enough, that I'd chosen wrong, that I was a failure. He's actually quite successful, I said, hating the defensive note in my voice. He's just private about his work. Because he doesn't exist, Jessica sang out, and several guests chuckled. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, seeing James's name on the screen. Running late, traffic. Be there in 20 minutes. Love you. My heart squeezed at those last 2 words. He'd started saying them a week ago, and every time it felt like a small miracle. Let me guess, my father said, noticing my phone. He's canceling? He's 20 minutes away, I replied, my voice barely audible. Sure he is, my mother said, exchanging glances with my Aunt Linda, who'd flown in from Boston for the occasion. Rachel, sweetheart, it's okay to be alone. You don't have to invent a relationship to make yourself feel better about your choices. I'm not inventing anything. Then where's the ring? Jessica demanded, grabbing my left hand and displaying it to the crowd. You said you were engaged, but there's no ring because there's no fiancé. I pulled my hand back, my cheeks burning. I never said I was engaged. You all just assumed. Because you let us, my mother interrupted. You let us believe you'd finally found someone because you knew we'd pity you otherwise. And here we are, pitying you anyway, because you got caught in your own lie." The words hit like physical blows. I looked around the garden, seeing the mixture of amusement and secondhand embarrassment on the faces of strangers and distant relatives. The fairy lights strung between trees that would look magical at dusk now seemed to mock me, promising a celebration I'd never be part of. "I think I should go," I whispered. "No. Stay," Jessica said quickly, her voice saccharine sweet. "I want to meet this mysterious fiancé. Unless you're admitting there isn't one." I checked my phone again. 15 minutes. I could endure 15 more minutes of this torture. James was real. He was coming. He'd meet my horrible family, and then I'd never have to see them again. I'd already decided, standing here in this garden full of people who should love me, but only seemed capable of cruelty, that this was the last time. After today, I was done. "I'll wait," I said quietly. My mother sighed heavily. "Rachel, this is just sad. You're making this worse for yourself." But I held my ground, checking the time on my phone every few seconds, willing James to arrive and prove them all wrong. The party continued around me, but I felt like I was standing in a bubble of isolation. My mother had cornered me by the drink table. "You know, when you were younger, I had such hopes for you. You were so bright, so full of potential. And then you went off to study animals and threw it all away." "I have a doctorate in wildlife biology, Mom. I didn't throw anything away." "A doctorate that pays how much? 45,000 a year? 50 if you're lucky?" She shook her head. "Meanwhile, Jessica is making 6 figures, marrying a man who makes even more. She's building a life. You're just drifting. I like my work," I said simply. That's what people say when they've failed at everything else. I excused myself and wandered to the edge of the garden where the perfectly trimmed hedges gave way to a view of the woods beyond. This house, this life, had never felt like home to me. I'd grown up here, sure, but I'd never belonged. My phone buzzed. 10 minutes out. "Can't wait to see you," I typed back quickly. "Warning, my family is awful. I'm sorry in advance, I can handle awful. See you soon." I smiled despite everything, tucking my phone away as my Aunt Linda approached. She was my mother's younger sister, equally obsessed with appearances and social standing. "Your mother told me about your imaginary boyfriend," she said without preamble. "I have to say, Rachel, it's a bit pathetic even for you." "He's not imaginary, Aunt Linda." "Then where is he?" "It's been what, an hour since the party started?" Any real boyfriend would have made it by now. I didn't bother explaining about traffic or work commitments. It wouldn't matter. They'd made up their minds about me years ago, and nothing I said would change their perspective. My father joined us, Marcus in tow. "Everything all right over here?" "Just chatting with Rachel about her mysterious fiancé," Linda said with a knowing smile. Marcus laughed. "Come on, Rachel. You can admit it. There's no guy. It's okay to be single. Some people just aren't meant for relationships." The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. "He's on his way," I repeated. "Sure he is," my father said. "Look, sweetheart, we're not trying to be cruel. We're just concerned. You've always been a bit different, and that's fine. But you don't need to make up stories to fit in." Different. That word had followed me my entire life. Different because I preferred books to parties. Different because I chose science over business. Different because I actually cared about making a difference instead of making money. "I'm not making anything up," I said, my voice tight. Jessica appeared at my father's elbow, her expression one of exaggerated sympathy. "Rachel, I know you wanted today to be about you too, but this is getting embarrassing. Can you please just admit there's no fiancé so we can all move on?" "Why do you care so much?" I shot back, surprising myself with my sudden anger. "Why does it matter to you if I'm dating someone or not?" "Because you're humiliating yourself," Jessica said, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "And by extension, you're humiliating all of us. Do you know how many people have asked me why my sister is lying about having a boyfriend?" I stared at her, this beautiful, accomplished woman who had everything she could want, and realized she was jealous, not of what I had, but of the possibility that I might have found something she hadn't. Genuine connection with someone who valued me for who I was. "He'll be here in 5 minutes," I said quietly. "And then you can all apologize," my mother laughed. "Oh, Rachel, you really committed to this, didn't you? What happens when 5 minutes pass and no one shows up?" I checked my phone. James had sent a new message. "Arriving now? Where should I land?" Land. My stomach did a small flip. He couldn't mean what I thought he meant, could he? Before I could respond, a sound cut through the ambient party noise, the distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades. Everyone in the garden fell silent, looking up as the sound grew louder. My mother's face went pale. "Is that a helicopter?" "It's probably just passing over," my father said, but he sounded uncertain. The helicopter appeared over the tree line, sleek and black, descending toward the open field adjacent to the property. The downdraft from the blades sent napkins and decorations flying, causing guests to scramble for cover. Jessica shrieked as her carefully arranged centerpieces toppled. I stood frozen, my heart pounding as the helicopter touched down gracefully about 50 yards away. The blades began to slow, and through the tinted windows I could see James's familiar silhouette. He was really here. "He'd come in a helicopter." "Rachel," my mother said weakly. "That's my fiancé," I said, and for the first time all day, I smiled. The helicopter door opened and James emerged. Looking impossibly handsome in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He carried a large gift box under one arm and waved to the crowd with his free hand, his smile warm and genuine. Even from a distance I could see his sandy hair was slightly windswept, his tanned skin a testament to the time he spent outdoors on various project sites. He walked toward us with easy confidence, completely unbothered by the stunned silence that had fallen over the party. Behind him, the helicopter pilot began powering down the aircraft, and I noticed another figure, a woman in professional attire, climbing out with several more wrapped packages. "Rachel," James called out when he spotted me, his whole face lighting up. He closed the distance between us in quick strides, set down the gift box and pulled me into his arms, kissing me with a tenderness that made my knees weak. "God, I missed you. Sorry I'm late, darling." Work ran longer than expected. When he pulled back, I was vaguely aware of my family gaping at us, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. "You came in a helicopter," he laughed. That rich, warm sound I'd fallen in love with. "Traffic was impossible, and I promised I'd be here. I borrowed it from a friend who runs a charter service. Cost me a favor, but you're worth it." He finally looked around at the assembled guests, his arms still around my waist. "I'm James. You must be Rachel's family. It's wonderful to finally meet you all." My mother had turned an interesting shade of red, somewhere between embarrassment and fury. My father looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. Jessica's mouth hung open, her perfect composure completely shattered. Marcus had gone pale, his earlier smugness evaporated. "You're real," my mother managed to say. "Very real," James confirmed with a grin, "and very much in love with your daughter." I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I know it's Jessica's celebration, and I didn't mean to steal focus. He turned to my sister, extending his free hand. "Congratulations on your engagement. Rachel's told me wonderful things about you. That was a lie, but a gracious one." Jessica mechanically shook his hand, her eyes fixed on his watch, a vintage Patek Philippe that probably cost more than her car. "The helicopter," my father started. "Just a convenient way to avoid traffic," James said easily. I was at a project site in Montana, and when Rachel told me about today, I knew I couldn't miss it. "We've been apart too long already." He squeezed my waist gently. The woman from the helicopter had reached us, carrying an armload of elegantly wrapped gifts. "Where would you like these, sir?" "These are for you," James said to Jessica and Marcus. Just a few things Rachel and I picked out. We wanted to contribute to the celebration. Jessica accepted the packages with trembling hands. There were 5 boxes, each wrapped in expensive-looking paper with elaborate bows. She opened the first one carefully. Inside was a crystal vase, clearly antique, clearly expensive. The second box held a set of monogrammed silver candlesticks. The third contained a gift certificate to one of Westchester's most exclusive restaurants, along with a bottle of wine that made Marcus's eyes widen. "This is a 1982 Chateau Margaux," Marcus breathed, carefully examining the bottle. "It's nothing," James said dismissively. "Just wanted to celebrate the happy couple properly." My Aunt Linda had crept closer, openly staring at James like he was some exotic creature. "What exactly do you do, young man?" "I work in environmental conservation," James replied. "Specifically, wildlife habitat preservation. That's how Rachel and I met, actually. She was consulting on one of my projects in Wyoming." "Consulting?" my mother echoed, looking at me with new eyes. "Rachel's research is crucial to several initiatives I'm funding," James explained. "Her work on habitat restoration has been groundbreaking. I'm trying to convince her to come work for me full-time, but she's committed to her current research position." He looked at me with such genuine pride that my chest tightened. "She's brilliant, your daughter. Though I suspect you already know that." The silence that followed was deafening. My family, who'd spent the last hour mocking me, stood there realizing they'd badly miscalculated. James wasn't some made-up boyfriend or trust fund activist. He was real, successful, and he clearly adored me. "I brought something for you too," James said, turning back to me. From his pocket, he produced a small velvet box. My heart stopped. I know we said we'd wait, but I couldn't hold on to this any longer. He opened the box, revealing a ring that took my breath away. It was a deep green emerald surrounded by small diamonds, set in platinum. The stone caught the light, seeming to hold the forest itself within its depths. "Rachel, I know your family thinks I'm some phantom you invented," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear but speaking only to me. "But I'm real, and so is what I feel for you. I've been carrying this ring for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. And I realized the right moment is whenever I'm with you. Will you marry me?" "Really marry me? Not just let your family assume things?" Tears were streaming down my face now. But they were good tears. Happy tears. "You already know my answer." "Say it anyway," he murmured, smiling. "Yes. Yes, of course. Yes." He slid the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly, because it had. He told me later he'd gotten my ring size from a mutual colleague who'd noticed which gloves I wore in the field. The emerald gleamed in the afternoon sun, and I couldn't stop staring at it. James kissed me again, deeper this time, and I heard someone in the crowd gasp. When we broke apart, he kept his arm around me, anchoring me to this moment, to this reality that was so much better than anything I could have imagined. "So," he said cheerfully to my family, "I understand there were some doubts about my existence." "Completely fair. Rachel and I have been keeping our relationship mostly private. She wanted to be sure before introducing me to everyone, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." My mother opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. We didn't mean—" "It's fine," I said quietly, finding my voice. "You made your opinions very clear. All of you did." I looked around at the assembled guests, at my family's mortified faces, at Jessica's barely contained fury at having her spotlight stolen. "Thank you for that. It made what happens next much easier." "What happens next?" my father asked wearily. "We leave," I said simply. "James and I have plans this evening, and I don't think we're needed here anymore." "Jessica, congratulations again on your engagement. I hope you have a beautiful wedding." I turned to my parents. "And thank you for hosting today. It's been very illuminating." "Rachel, wait," my mother said, reaching for my arm. "We should talk." "Should we?" "About what?" "How you spent the last hour telling everyone I was a liar? How you mocked my career, my choices, my life?" I shook my head. "I don't think there's anything left to say." James's assistant had been standing quietly to the side, but now she approached with a large envelope. "These are for the bride and groom," she said, handing it to Jessica. "From Rachel and James for the wedding." Jessica opened the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out what appeared to be a check. Her eyes widened. "That's $50,000 for the wedding expenses," James said casually. "Rachel mentioned you were planning something elaborate. Consider it our gift. Use it however you'd like." The amount was staggering, especially coming from someone my family had assumed was either unemployed or a trust fund baby playing at activism. $50,000 was more than generous. It was a statement. Marcus looked like he might faint. "We really should go," I said, taking James's hand. "We have dinner reservations and the helicopter needs to be back by sunset." As we walked toward the helicopter, my family stood frozen in the garden, surrounded by their stunned guests. I could hear the whispered conversations starting up, the speculation about who James really was, how much money he had, what it meant that he'd arrived in a helicopter bearing expensive gifts. But I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. James helped me into the helicopter, and as we lifted off, I looked down at the party below. Jessica was still clutching the check. My parents were arguing with each other, and the guests were scattered across the lawn, phones out, probably already posting about the dramatic turn of events on social media. "You okay?" James asked, buckling himself in beside me. "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. The ring on my finger caught the light, the emerald winking like a promise of better things to come. 2 weeks after Jessica's engagement party, I woke up in James's arms in my small apartment. We'd spent the past 14 days in a blissful bubble, mostly ignoring the outside world except for our work commitments. He'd extended his stay in New York, working remotely while I continued my research at the university lab. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Jessica. "Family dinner tonight at Mom and Dad's. Please come. We need to talk about something important." I showed James the message. He was already awake, his sandy hair mussed from sleep, looking unfairly handsome in the morning light. "Do you want to go?" he asked. "Not particularly, but if we're going to try to rebuild this relationship, I suppose I should make an effort. Then we'll go together." I texted back a confirmation, and Jessica responded immediately with a heart emoji. That alone was suspicious. My sister didn't use heart emojis with me. We weren't that kind of siblings. At 6 that evening, we pulled up to my parents' house in James's rental car. The same perfectly manicured lawn, the same imposing facade, but somehow it felt less intimidating now. Maybe because I had James beside me. Maybe because I'd finally stood up for myself. My mother answered the door, and to my surprise, she pulled me into a hug. A real one, not the stiff, obligatory embraces I was used to. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "Both of you." Inside, the dining room table was set for 6. My father was opening a bottle of wine, not the expensive kind James had gifted them, but a decent vintage nonetheless. Jessica and Marcus were already seated, looking nervous. "What's going on?" I asked as James pulled out my chair. "We wanted to talk to you about something," my father began. "After what happened at the party, your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking about how we've treated you, about our priorities, about what really matters." My mother took a shaky breath. "We've been terrible parents to you, Rachel, for years, and we want to make amends." I glanced at James, who squeezed my hand under the table. "Okay," I said cautiously. "We've set up a fund," my father continued, "for wildlife conservation research in your name. It's not much, $50,000 to start, but we want to contribute to the work you're doing. We want to support you the way we should have been supporting you all along." I stared at them, speechless. $50,000, the same amount James had given Jessica for her wedding. "We also want to feature your work in our holiday letter this year," my mother added. "For years we've been bragging about Jessica's accomplishments to our friends, but we've barely mentioned you. That changes now. We want people to know that our daughter is doing important work, making a real difference in the world." "And I want to apologize again," Jessica said, her voice small. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I should have defended you. You were right. I was jealous of you, Rachel, not of what you had, but of the fact that you had the courage to choose your own path, to do what made you happy, regardless of what anyone else thought. I've spent my whole life trying to be what Mom and Dad wanted, and you just didn't. You were brave, and I was a coward." Tears were streaming down my face now. James handed me his napkin, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "I don't know what to say," I managed. You don't have to say anything, my father replied. We don't expect you to forgive us immediately. We just want you to know that we're trying. We see you now, Rachel. Really see you. And we're proud of you. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. We talked about my research, about James's projects, about Jessica's wedding plans. Marcus asked intelligent questions about habitat restoration, and my mother actually listened when I explained the intricacies of my work. As we were leaving, Jessica caught my arm. There's something else, she said quietly. I've been talking to the partners at my firm. We handle a lot of environmental law, and I mentioned your work to them. They're interested in providing pro bono legal services for conservation initiatives. I thought maybe James's foundation could use that kind of support. I looked at my sister, this woman I'd spent so long resenting, and saw her trying. Really trying. That would be amazing, Jessica. Thank you. It's the least I can do. In the car on the way back to my apartment, James was quiet. Finally, he said, Dom, that was unexpected. Good unexpected or bad unexpected? Good, definitely good. Your family really is trying. They are, I said. I didn't think they would, but they are. He brought my hand to his lips. You deserve this, Rachel. You deserve to have people who see your worth. I have you. That's enough. You have me, and now you have them too. You can have both. Maybe he was right. Maybe I could have both. The next morning, I woke to my phone ringing. It was barely 7 a.m., and James groaned beside me, pulling a pillow over his head. Who calls this early? He mumbled. I grabbed my phone, squinting at the screen. Unknown number? I almost declined, but something made me answer. Rachel? It's Dr. Mitchell from Cornell University. I sat up quickly. Dr. Mitchell, is everything okay? More than okay. I'm calling because we've had a development. You know the habitat restoration project you consulted on last year? Of course. It had been one of my favorite projects, working with Dr. Mitchell's team to develop new techniques for ecosystem recovery. The results are in, and Rachel, they're extraordinary. We're seeing a 93% success rate in species reintroduction. That's unprecedented. We're going to publish the findings, and we want you as lead author. My heart stopped. Lead author, you developed the methodology. You should get the credit. This is going to change the field, Rachel. This is the kind of breakthrough that saves entire ecosystems. After I hung up, I turned to James, who'd given up on sleep and was watching me with a smile. Good news? The best news? The restoration project, it worked. It really worked. And they want me to lead the publication. He pulled me into his arms, laughing. Of course it worked. You're brilliant. I've been telling you that for months. This is huge. James, this could mean grants, more research opportunities, maybe even a permanent position at Cornell. Dr. Mitchell mentioned they're creating a new conservation biology chair. He thinks I should apply. Then you should apply. Rachel, this is everything you've worked for. But a permanent position would mean staying in upstate New York, and James's work took him all over the world. The reality of our situation suddenly crashed over me. What's wrong? He asked, reading my expression. If I take a position at Cornell and you're traveling constantly for your projects, then we figure it out, he interrupted. I can base myself out of Ithaca. It's beautiful up there, and most of my work can be done remotely anyway. The only time I need to be on site is for major meetings or project launches. You'd do that? Restructure your whole life. Rachel, I'd restructure my whole life 100 times over if it meant being with you. You're not asking me to give anything up. You're giving me a reason to build a home base, something I've never had. I've been nomadic for years because I had no reason to stay anywhere. Now I have a reason, you. I kissed him, pouring all my gratitude and love into it. When we finally broke apart, he was grinning. Besides, Ithaca has gorges and waterfalls and you. What more could I want? My phone rang again. This time it was Jessica. Can I call you back? I answered. I just got some amazing news. Is it about the paper? Because I just saw Dr. Mitchell's tweet about it. Rachel, this is incredible. He's calling you a pioneering voice in wildlife conservation. I put her on speaker so James could hear. You follow Dr. Mitchell on social media? I started following a bunch of conservation biology accounts after the engagement party. I wanted to understand your work better. And Rachel, what you're doing is incredible. I had no idea the scope of it. There are so many people talking about your research, so many organizations citing your findings. How did we not know about this? Because you never asked, I said, but without bitterness. I know, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm asking now. Tell me everything, so I did. I spent 20 minutes explaining the restoration project, the methodology, the implications for conservation worldwide. Jessica listened, asked questions, and for the first time in our lives, I felt like she was seeing me as a person, not just the disappointing sister. I'm going to send this to everyone I know, she declared when I finished. My partners, my friends, everyone. They need to know what you're doing. After we hung up, James pulled me back into bed. Your sister is becoming your biggest cheerleader. It's weird, but good weird. It's what you deserve. Everyone who knows you should be cheering for you. We spent the rest of the morning making plans. James would start looking for a permanent place near Cornell. I would apply for the university position. We'd set a wedding date for next spring, somewhere beautiful and intimate, maybe in the Adirondacks with mountains and lakes surrounding us. The publication of my paper changed everything. Within a week, I was fielding calls from universities, conservation organizations, and even a documentary filmmaker. Cornell officially offered me the position of associate professor and director of the new Wildlife Conservation Research Center. James threw an impromptu celebration at a restaurant overlooking Cayuga Lake, inviting my family, colleagues, and several of his conservation partners. My mother cried when she gave her toast. I'm so sorry it took me this long to see what an extraordinary woman my daughter is. But I see it now, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure she knows how proud I am. My father stood next, his voice thick with emotion. Rachel has always been brave enough to follow her heart, even when we tried to push her in a different direction. She's taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or status, but in the impact we have on the world. My daughter is changing the world, one ecosystem at a time. Jessica's toast surprised me most. I spent my whole life being the golden child, the one who did everything right. But watching Rachel, I realized I was doing everything safe. She took risks. She chose passion over prestige, and she found more happiness than I've ever known. Rachel, you're my hero. I hope someday I have half your courage. When it was my turn to speak, I looked around the table at the faces of people who loved me, supported me, believed in me. James beside me, his hand warm in mine. My family, imperfect but trying. My colleagues excited about the future of our research. 3 months ago, I went to my sister's engagement party expecting to be humiliated, I began. I was prepared for my family to mock me, dismiss me, treat me like a failure. And they did. But then something amazing happened. James showed up in a helicopter. Laughter rippled around the table. But more importantly, he showed up for me. He saw me when my family couldn't. And somehow his seeing me helped them see me too. I'm not going to pretend the years of hurt don't exist. They do. But I'm choosing to focus on the future, on the family we're building together, on the work we're going to do to protect wildlife and habitats. Thank you all for being here, for supporting this work, and for believing that one person really can make a difference. Later, as the party wound down, Marcus pulled me aside. I owe you an apology too, he said. I was dismissive of your work, of James, of everything you'd built. I bought into the narrative that success looked a certain way, and anything different was less than. But you've taught me something important. You've taught me that there are different kinds of wealth. And the kind you have, purpose, passion, love, that's the kind that actually matters. Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. Jessica and I have been talking. We want to do more with our lives than just accumulate money. We're thinking about getting involved in conservation work, maybe funding some projects, using our legal and financial skills to make a difference. Would you and James be willing to talk to us about it? I'd love that. As guests started leaving, my mother took my hand. I know I can't undo the past, but I want you to know that I'm going to be better. I'm going to be the mother you deserved all along. Just keep trying, Mom. That's all I ask. She hugged me tight, and I felt her tears on my shoulder. "I love you so much, Rachel. I'm so sorry I didn't show it better. I love you too, Mom." 6 months later, my parents stood in the Adirondacks and watched me marry the man who'd arrived in a helicopter. Jessica was my maid of honor, tears streaming down her face as she adjusted my veil. My father walked me down the makeshift aisle, whispering, "I'm so proud of you, one more." Time as James slipped the ring onto my finger, matched to my engagement ring with emeralds, the color of the forest around us. I looked out at the small gathering of people we loved. My family, imperfect but trying. Our friends and colleagues, united by shared passion for conservation. And James, my partner in every sense of the word, smiling at me like I'd hung the moon, standing there, exchanging vows with the man I loved while my family watched with genuine pride and support. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. My family had ridiculed my fake fiancé, called me a disappointment, tried to humiliate me in front of everyone who mattered to them. But that day had become a turning point, not an ending. Because James had shown up, literally descended from the sky, and forced them to see what they'd been missing all along. The revenge I'd gotten wasn't the bitter, destructive kind. It was better than that. It was the revenge of living well, of building a life so full of purpose and love that their earlier dismissal of me became irrelevant. It was watching them realize what they'd almost lost and seeing them work to be better. It was standing here about to start a marriage built on mutual respect and shared values, knowing that I'd never again let anyone make me feel less than I was. As James kissed me and our small gathering cheered, I thought about that girl at Jessica's engagement party, standing alone while her family mocked her. I wished I could tell her that everything was going to be okay, that the man she was waiting for would arrive in the most spectacular way possible, that her family would eventually come around, that her work would be recognized and celebrated, that she would find happiness she never thought possible. But mostly, I wished I could tell her what I'd finally learned, that her worth wasn't determined by her family's approval or anyone else's validation. She was enough, exactly as she was, doing exactly what she loved. The rest would follow. The years after my family's betrayal at Jessica's engagement party proved transformative. My parents' Rachel Conservation Fund now supported 5 different wildlife research projects across North America. Jessica's law firm provided pro bono legal services to environmental organizations, and she'd become an advocate for habitat protection legislation. Marcus had joined the board of a major conservation nonprofit, using his financial expertise to help them expand their programs. But the most unexpected change had been in my relationship with my family. We had dinner together once a month, and they actually asked about my work, listened to my answers, celebrated my successes. My mother had framed my published paper and hung it in their living room, showing it to anyone who visited. My father had read every article I'd written, highlighting passages and asking questions. Jessica and I had become real sisters, texting regularly, supporting each other through challenges, celebrating victories together. As for James and me, we'd built a life that was equal parts adventure and stability. We split our time between Ithaca, where I taught and conducted research, and various project sites around the world where James's conservation work took us. We'd bought a farmhouse overlooking Cayuga Lake, where we could watch sunsets and plan our next project. Every day felt like a gift, working side by side to protect the ecosystems we loved, building a future together. The week after our wedding, as we settled into our new home, I received an email that made me laugh out loud. It was from my Aunt Linda, the one who'd been so vicious at Jessica's party. "Dear Rachel, I owe you the most profound apology. I was cruel to you at Jessica's engagement party, and I've regretted it every day since. Your mother has been sending me updates about your work, and I'm ashamed that I dismissed you so readily. I've made a donation to your conservation fund in your honor. I hope someday you can forgive me." With deepest regrets, Aunt Linda showed James the email, and he wrapped his arms around me from behind as I stood at our kitchen window, looking out at the lake. "Are you going to respond?" he asked, eventually. "But not today," I turned in his arms. Today, I just want to enjoy this. Us, our home. Our life. That sounds perfect. We spent the afternoon unpacking boxes, hanging pictures, making our house into a home. On the mantel, I placed a photo from Jessica's engagement party, the moment when James emerged from the helicopter. My mother had snapped it without me knowing, and Jessica had it framed as a wedding gift. In the photo, I'm standing with my hand over my mouth, tears on my cheeks, looking at James like he's performed a miracle. "That's my favorite picture of you," James said, coming to stand beside me. "You look like you're seeing hope for the first time." I was, I admitted. In that moment, I realized I didn't have to accept their version of me. I could choose my own story, and what a story it is. He kissed my temple. The brilliant scientist, the man in the helicopter, the family that learned to see her worth. "Don't forget the $50,000 wedding gift," I added with a laugh. "That was peak drama. I regret nothing." He grinned. "Your sister's face alone was worth every penny." That evening, we sat on our porch watching the sunset paint the lake in shades of gold and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Thank you for never giving up on us, even when we gave you every reason to. You taught me what real strength looks like." I showed James, and he squeezed my hand. "You know what the best part of this whole story is?" "What?" "You didn't need me to rescue you. You were already rescuing yourself. I just showed up at the right moment to make sure everyone else noticed." He was right. The helicopter, the gifts, the proposal, they were dramatic gestures that forced my family to pay attention. But the real change, the lasting transformation, came from me finally believing in my own worth. James had simply held up a mirror so everyone else could see what was already there. "I love you," I said, leaning my head on his shoulder. "I love you too. And tomorrow, we start our next adventure." "What's that?" "Whatever we want it to be. That's the beauty of building a life on your own terms." As darkness fell and the first stars appeared over the lake, I thought about the journey from that humiliating afternoon to this peaceful evening. The pain, the anger, the eventual healing. The family that had broken me and then slowly, painstakingly, helped put me back together, better and stronger than before. I thought about all the girls and women out there who felt like I had, dismissed, diminished, told they weren't enough. I hoped they would find their own helicopters, their own moments of vindication. But more than that, I hoped they would find what I'd found: the courage to define success on their own terms, the strength to walk away from toxic relationships, and the wisdom to accept reconciliation when it was genuine. The revenge of living well isn't about rubbing success in anyone's face. It's about building a life so fulfilling, so aligned with your values, that other people's opinions become irrelevant. It's about choosing joy over bitterness, growth over resentment, and love over fear. As James and I sat there in the gathering darkness, planning research projects and conservation initiatives, laughing about the absurdity of helicopter proposals and $50,000 gifts, I realized I'd gotten something better than revenge. I'd gotten my life back. And it was beautiful. The end.